very dark period for the next couple of decades, but then in early 1970s, President Nixon opened it up. And right after President Nixon went, I was able to go in with a group, and I was one of the first American Army officers that was allowed into China since the 1949 revolution. I was there for 3 weeks, had a great time. So Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, lots of different places. But it was a different country then than it is now. Then when I went, everybody wore the same uniform. The Chinese Army, PLA, People's Liberation Army. Couldn't tell who was a sergeant and who was a general. They all wore the same uniforms. Most of the people dressed identically. Very, very dull, boring society. It was coming out of what I'm sure you'll hear about, what's called the Great Cultural Revolution. And academic freedom was suppressed, the people were suppressed. And then about 5 or 6 years after I was there, they realized they were going nowhere, and they changed their economic system. And now they're the second largest economy in the face of the earth, and I'm sure you'll get to that in due course.
Mr. Powell, just to connect immediately to what the kids have been learning in world history, we had kind of a debate, you know, capitalism or communism, right? Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek. What was America's general impression of Chairman Mao from 1950, 1960, 1970? Is he a good guy, bad guy? I mean, what do they think?
You'll have different points of view within American political society at that time. There were a lot of people who thought he was a very bad guy because he was a communist, because those were the days of superpower conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, the United States and China. But others thought that this was a country of enormous potential, 1 billion people, and that Mao had at least brought some structure and stability to the country. And maybe over time the country would reform itself, and therefore let's work with him. And that was the judgment that President Nixon made and Secretary Kissinger when they went to China in '71, I guess it was, and started to say, okay, look, you're communists, you have an authoritarian system, political system. It's not like ours, but two countries as large as ours should have some basis for a relationship, even though we don't agree on your political system and the way you treat your people compared to the way we treat our people in our political system. And then over the last now 40 years, they still have an authoritarian system. I don't know, it's quite communist like it used to be, but it's still an authoritarian system with several people in charge. And they don't vote for who's going to be in charge. It's just the way it is. But it is far more liberal as a society than it was 40 years ago. So they have made improvements. But when I go to China, I still go to China, and I know most of the senior Chinese leadership, the president, the premier, the foreign minister, they're all people I work with over the years. And they're very candid. They say, we understand your system, Jeffersonian democracy, but we don't think it works for us. We have now 1.3 billion people, almost 5 times the population of the United States. And every morning we have to feed 1.3 billion people. Every morning we have to house them, we have to give them schooling for their children, and we're going to do it our way. So we're going to remain authoritarian. But we've learned that our economic system wasn't working. So we now have a very open economic system. We're trading with you, we're in the World Trading Organization, and we believe that that is the right mix for us. Now, I still don't think it's the best political system, but is it my place to judge them as long as they're improving the lives of their people? They're not oppressing their people the way they used to in the past, or the way the government before them used to do. And so they still have the major challenge facing them is that they have brought 400 million people, this is bigger than our country, out of poverty into the middle class. But in a country of 1.3 billion people, that means that there are 900 million people who are still poor and in need. That's 3 times our population. And so what they're focusing on is how do we get a better life for those 800, 900 million people. Most of them are on farms. Most of them are subsistence farmers, meaning they just make enough food to supply the country, but their life never becomes much better. And the Chinese leadership thinks they only need 200 million farmers. Therefore, they have to find new industries and jobs to take up the energy of roughly 500 to 600 million people, twice the number of Americans that there are. And so that means they have to keep industrializing. And you see that they're using 40% of the concrete in the world. They're building power plants every day, every week. It's for the purpose of industrializing. So they're going through a massive industrial revolution. And when they build these new factories and start making things, they got to sell those things to, guess who? Hello, us. Or to their own people, if they have a rising middle class. And so when people say to me, well, isn't China going to become an enemy? No, they're not going to be an enemy. They've been doing too well by not being an enemy. They're trading with us. And, well, what are they going to fight about? What are they going to fight about? The only thing we're going to fight about is they want more shelf space in Walmart. They need more. They need to sell us stuff. And they need more investment. So we will have difficulties with China, areas of contention, particularly with respect to human rights, religious freedom. But at the same time, it is not so much discontent that will result in a war. They need us, we need them, and that's a good thing compared to the way it was 40 or 50 years ago. So you now know all about Chinese history.
That's great. We know a lot of the students have questions for you. Do you mind if they ask you either regarding
ask one or so because I've got to keep moving.
Of course. Of course. Does anyone have one of the questions that we were talking about earlier you might like to hear General Powell answer?
You.
Destiny? You had a good one. What was it?
I said, why did you want to become president? Why did you want to be president?
I didn't want to be. I thought about it, and I'm a soldier. I'm not a politician. And after giving it a great deal of thought and looking inside myself and talking to my family and seeing what they want to do, I never woke up any single morning really wanting to do that. And in life, you better do what you want to do, not what other people are trying to force you to do or think you should do. And I didn't have inside of me the kind of passion you need to have to run for office. Glad we have the President Obamas of the world. I'm glad we have the Bushes and all the others who seek political office. We need them. But I'm glad we have them, but that's not my life. I'm a professional soldier. And that's, even though I'm now, I've been a diplomat, I've been in business, I've been in the public sector, private sector. I do a lot of nonprofit stuff, a lot of educational work, but I'm still basically, my profession is I'm a professional soldier. And politics really never turned me on as much as my profession of being a good soldier. Okay? Anyone else? Yes.
After all you've been through, do you have any regrets?
On what?
After all you've been through, do you have any regrets?
Well, everybody has regrets in that you wish, something would have gone differently. Everybody makes mistakes. A lot of youngsters ask me questions like that. Have you ever made a mistake? Yeah, every day. I probably made one earlier this morning. Mistakes and failures and things that don't go right are part of life. And what I've learned over the years is when you make a mistake or something that goes really bad, learn from it. Think about what you did wrong, not what somebody else did wrong. What did you do wrong that might have caused that error or that mistake or that failure? And fix yourself. And then once you've done that, you roll it up in a ball, think about it a minute, and you throw it over your shoulder and you don't think about it anymore. You keep moving forward. Tomorrow it's going to be better. Look through the front windshield, don't look through the side of your mirror. And so the specific question you asked, do I have any regrets? I wish I had done a lot of things differently, but I don't walk around regretting things because regretting doesn't do anything for me. I always keep moving forward. You have to leave errors behind you once you've learned from them. Otherwise, they drag you down. How many of you know kids who keep telling you about something that went wrong last year or the year before? I don't want to hear it anymore. What are you telling me? Let's move on. Let's get on. Well, I failed the test. Somebody dissed me. Well, get over it. Go. Move on. Life's too short for you to spend your time thinking about what went wrong yesterday or the day before. Always be thinking about what's going to be better tomorrow and how can I make it better. And so, did I make lots of mistakes? Sure. Do I have regrets? Yeah, I have regrets, but I don't spend any time on them because there's nothing I can do about them. They're in the past. They're gone. They're done. They're history. And so, look ahead, not behind. And it tears you up. It can be an anchor on your soul. always think about what went wrong, who did something to me yesterday, or this, that, and the other, I wish this, I wish that. When I came into the Army, we just stopped segregating our units. I was the first generation of officers coming into the Army in an integrated Army, no separation, black here, white there. And they said to me very clearly, now listen, we don't care about all that segregated stuff, that's over. We don't care that you are a poor kid born in Harlem and raised in the Bronx, public school kid, you didn't go to West Point, we don't care. We don't care that you have immigrant parents, we don't care any of that stuff, so don't give us any hard luck stories about it. We don't give a darn. The only thing we care about is performance. And Powell, if you perform, you're going to get ahead. But don't carry all this baggage behind you thinking that it means anything to us. It doesn't. The only thing that counts is performance. And that's the way I started out as a young 21-year-old officer. And I never forgot that early advice. Performance is the only thing that counts. It's the only thing you're really ultimately going to be measured by. So always do your best. Always perform to the highest capability that you have. And always be looking ahead, not wallowing about what happened in the past. I can't do this because I came from a bad neighborhood. I can't do this because of this, because of that. Nobody cares. Perform. Perform and you get ahead. Don't perform, don't study, don't learn, and you won't get ahead. That might sound a little simple, but the truth, I promise you. Take care, guys.